What's going on, everybody? It's Brian Trippe. Welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Investing Live Podcast. We interview the very best real estate investors, entrepreneurs, and business leaders all throughout the country. And today, I have a very special guest, Mr. John Jackson, the lease option king. How's it going today, John?
What do you say, Brian? Man, I'm so glad to be here on the podcast. I'm kind of surprised, a little hurt inside that this is the first time I've been on. So I'm hurt, but I'm glad that I finally made it, though. I finally made it to the level of my career. After almost 17 years, I can finally be on REI Live.tv.
So you just got done telling me before we started this thing that you were speaking at a big conference.
Yes.
And you asked the question, who had ever heard of you before? And only like 4 or 5 or 6 people raised their hand. Well, I would have been one of those 6 people.
Yeah. You know what? It's funny, Brian, you and I had met, of course, we've got tons and tons of common, friends. But you and I first really met recently in Tampa. And I knew who you were and everything, but I think we just really recently met. And it was obvious that you really didn't know exactly who I was. And not that I'm that big of a thing, but when I go speak, I'm from Texas. And when I speak, it's normally in Texas. And most everybody knows who I am in Texas. Right. But to go to Ohio and be in front of hundreds and hundreds of people, go, all right, just get a feel for the crowd. All right, who's heard of me before? And like 3 people. I was like, ooh, tough crowd.
Sometimes that's a good thing.
It was a great thing.
You're fresh, right?
Yeah.
So, John, let's start right there. I want you to tell everybody who you are, like what you've done in real estate and what you do today specifically.
Yeah, fantastic, Brian. So I am actually Joe McCall coined the name King of Lease Options for me because he and I go way back. And so I do lease options. I am in Texas, so I do lease options mainly in Texas. And yes, if you're listening or watching this, you can do lease options in Texas. I'm known as the go-to guy for Texas specifically, but of course we do lease options over the U.S. as well. And my company is Leasing to Buy. So this isn't just something I teach and speak about. This is what I do. And I started Leasing to Buy back in 2003 and having no clue what I was doing. But I was a day trader at the time. So I was trading stocks and options from home. And as I looked to get into real estate, I saw there was a couple of similarities between the stock market and the real estate market, real estate investing, I should say. And that is one of the things, Brian, is all markets are cyclical, right? Whether it be real estate, futures, options, stock market, real estate, all markets are cyclical. The other thing that really stuck out to me, Brian, is that you've got to find your niche. Mm-hmm. And as people, especially starting off, as entrepreneurs, we're scatterbrained. That's just the way it is. And we're always chasing a shiny object. Yet as educators, we're telling people, stop chasing the shiny object. But the truth is, we're chasing the shiny objects ourselves. We're fascinated by the next shiny thing.
Don't tell anybody that.
Yeah, cat's out of the bag. But I knew I had to find my niche. And as looking at different types of real estate, there's, as you know, hundreds of, there's all kinds. There's rentals, fix and flip, rehab, all kinds of stuff. And I found lease options to be the niche I wanted to pursue because, first of all, I understood options because I had traded options in the market for a few years, but also because done properly, it required no risk and no capital. I didn't have to go get a loan, no credit. Nobody's checking my credit. And at the time, now this is way back, Brian, back in 2002, when I first started probably looking into it, 2002, early 03. At the time, there was really nothing out there at all about lease options that I could find. The only thing I could find was lease options was a way to make money on a property, getting someone into a property that could never qualify for the house. They were never going to buy the house. And then a year later, you kick them out and you do it all over again. And I thought, okay, well, that's ripping people off. But what if you take the essence of a lease option and you put all the pieces in place so it's a win-win situation, win-win-win situation. And that's how Leasing to Buy developed. That's how it started. And we've since done, it's well over 650 lease options that we've done. And now over 98% of our buyers get financed within 12 months. So it's and we're really guiding them through the path to success.
Well, I was going to ask you, why would someone even do a lease option? You kind of answered that. So let me tweak that question a little bit. you mentioned markets are cyclical. Is this the right time to do a lease? When is the best time to do a lease option?
So and we'll get into the 3 different types of lease options here shortly, but this is, and like you said, I just spoke in Ohio at a big event, and I was showing the graph, the real estate market cycle, the graph, and I showed when leasing to buy started, the crash, and back up, and now it's actually pulling back. It's been pulling back for a year. I know that. This is the absolute best time because lease options flourish as the market's pulling back. When the market was crashing, 07, 08, 09, 2010, I was doing so many properties, Brian, I wouldn't do marketing for a solid 4 months in a row. I just wouldn't do any marketing, no mailing, no anything, because I had so much inventory. I was moving so many properties that people were just, homeowners were just coming to me. And so I couldn't keep up with it. Now at the time, I didn't have VAs or anybody do anything. It was it was kind of a one-man show. Even though I had reps out in the area doing stuff for me, as far as like a VA or anything, I didn't have anybody. Looking back, had I known then what I know now, oh my gosh, I could have done 3 or 4 times the properties. But the point is, Brian, to your question, this is the exact right time in the market because it's pulling back. And so what happens, Brian, is as the market softens up, it's the houses that are in the slightly above median price range that start to feel the pain first. So anybody listening or watching this podcast, there's going to be so many people out there right now, Brian, go, well, you don't know, you don't get it, John. It's so hot in my market. House goes in the market, 2 days later has 5 offers. Well, I say that's a rare thing. They see that one house that went like that. They go, oh, that's it. It's a hot market. I can't do anything here. Guys, I have people all over the U.S., and I will pull up online and pull over 60 days on market, and there's so many of them. Ohio, perfect example. Before I went up there, like 2 days before I went there, I pulled, I just went to Redfin, which obviously on Redfin, it's not all MLS, but it gives you a feel, for what's going on. In Ohio, over 60 days on market within a specific price range, there's like 3,300 houses. Mm-hmm. And so what happens, you can see that grow and grow and grow. So this is the perfect time to get into lease options. And I remember when I knew a lot of investors that were doing very well before the crash. After the crash, a lot of them went bankrupt. That they had to file corporate bankruptcy, some of them personal bankruptcy. Meanwhile, I was flourishing. So I'm loving the fact the market's pulling back. It gets easier and easier to get the housing inventory.
Well, as far as like the market pulling back, I think that's going to be town to town, city to city. I think maybe what I hear you saying is in that specific price range, you're saying that the market's pulling back.
Yeah. So what we see is, so let me clarify that. So as you adjust down from that price range, so I said slightly above median price range. So here we're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So we see houses that are say 300,000 and above, even 275 and above, and you're seeing that soften up. So you're seeing the days on market go longer and longer. Now, if you go down below, say 180,000 to 100,000, here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, the days on market, it's not that soft because those are more affordable houses, right? And so you're going to see that from town to town, certainly. But yeah, the higher price range houses, or slightly above median price range houses, even median price range houses, you're seeing it, start softening up.
Well, John, I don't want to necessarily talk about how to do a lease option transaction because we can get in the weeds and we can talk about that for a long time. And we've done lots of videos on there. And I'll actually, if you're watching this on YouTube right now, I'll go ahead and link something up right now. I'll put a little link right there on how to execute a lease option. We've done lots of videos on that. But I would like to kind of, you mentioned a second ago the different types of lease options. I would like to kind of get into that and just know maybe what's possible, what's out there. And then I have some very specific questions I do want to ask you towards the end of the show about law. And I know you're not an attorney, but there's a lot of things out there in the news about negative about lease options. I want to get to that if you don't mind. I'd love to talk to you about that as well.
Yeah. And so, if I don't know the answer, I'll just make it up. So
yeah, you can do that.
Just like an attorney.
Yeah, and there's some truth to that actually. So let's start there, John. Let's talk about the different types of lease options and why we might do each one of those.
Yeah, so, and I'll try to keep this fairly concise. So, because I plan on going 10 hours on each type, but apparently you just shut that down. So thanks, Brian. But
I'm trying to get out of here in 30 minutes.
Yeah. So, okay. So there's a straight lease option. First, I'll name them straight lease option, sandwich lease option, then a lease option assignment, also called wholesaling lease option. So the most simple kind is the straight lease option. The straight lease option is where if you own a property, and when I talk about own a property, just for everybody listening, the mortgage has nothing to do with anything. You can do a lease option on any property if it has a mortgage. It doesn't matter. I just want people to know. Sometimes they think, well, you got to own it free and clear. Nope, not at all. I don't care what state you live in. But a straight lease option is where you own a property that maybe you are going to rent out. Maybe it's a rental property, but you're okay selling it if the price is right. And so you want to get away from being so much of a landlord, and you want to cash flow a little bit more. You want the people to take better care of it. A straight lease option is perfect for that, because instead of getting a deposit, you're going to get an option fee, which may be 4 or 5% on average of the price of the house. You're going to get top dollar, no negotiating, no haggling. You're normally going to get a little bit more than market rent. And the buyers take much, much better care of the property as well. What we do for our, what's called tenant buyers, people buying the property, is they get a home warranty on the house. So again, if something will go wrong, they call the 800 number, and it's taken care of. So that's a straight lease option. But there's a sandwich lease option, which is where you stay in the middle. That's why it's called a sandwich lease option. You've got the seller, you've got you, the investor, and you've got the buyer, the end buyer. On that particular lease option, you're negotiating with the seller the price, the option price, and the monthly payment. So once you negotiate that, now the contract between you and the seller, that's the AB transaction. Now you turn around and you go and market that property as a lease option on the backside, the BC side. And so maybe you put a sign in the yard, no bank qualifying, lease option, rent to own, whatever. And you go and market that property. The buyer comes along, sees that, goes, oh my gosh, I love that property. And how much is it? And you say, well, it's whatever. It's X amount above whatever you're contracted for. Maybe you've got a contract at, say, $170,000 and you're paying $1,200 a month to the owner. And you market it as a lease option, $200,000, $1,600 a month, whatever the numbers are. So you're going to get down payment or option fee from that end buyer. So in a sandwich lease option, there's 3 profits there. So there's the option fee you're getting, sometimes referred to as the down payment, but I won't get into the whole nitty gritty of terminology, but you're getting your option fee from the buyer. You're cash flowing each month, in this case, say $400. And then when that buyer cashes you out, they get financed, you're making that equity, whatever that spread is. So you're controlling that property for whatever, maybe 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever, without having to go get a loan, without anybody checking your credit or anything. You're cash flowing it. You're getting option fee. If maybe the people relocate, they don't buy, okay, get your sign back in the yard, market it again. You get the option fee again. So you're generating cash flow as well off that property. It's a sandwich lease option. Now, what we specialize in with leasing to buy, and this is what I tell people starting off in real estate to really do, is lease option assignments. And what a lease option assignment is where you're working with a homeowner that maybe they've got their house in the market for 30 days, 60 days, 9 days, whatever. Maybe it's for sale by owner, maybe it's for rent by owner. And you're going in and saying, and putting together a lease option for that property, full price, okay, what they're asking for the property. You're putting all the terms in there, the price, the monthly payment, all that. They're getting full price, everything they want. You're then marketing that contract, just like a wholesaler markets a contract. You're marketing that contract to the end tenant buyer, the optionee. So they're paying you an assignment fee for that contract. Now they're paying the owner each month. So once they pay your assignment fee, you're out of the deal, okay? But the seller gets somebody in the property. It stops the bleeding if the house is empty. The house, they take very good care of the property. The buyer gets into a house they couldn't qualify for otherwise, and you get the assignment fee. Now, with leasing to buy with our company, we actually get the buyer, if they need it, into credit improvement. We put them in touch with the lending company, et cetera. So it's kind of taking them all the way down the line, all the way to finance. But those are the 3 types right there. And so the reason I say that I like lease option assignments for people starting off is you're not making any payments on the house. You're never on the hook for any payments. And the owner knows that. Just like if a realtor were to go list a house or get a listing agreement for the house, the owner knows the agent's not making any payments. They're not the one buying it. the owner knows the same thing with us. We've got the contract with them. We're going to assign it to the end buyer. Those are the three types right there, Brian.
So there's a straight lease option, the sandwich lease option, and then the last one is, I guess for argument's sake, it's assignments, it's assigning contracts, which some people would call that wholesaling.
Yeah, some people call it, yeah.
And so that's kind of, we've had Joe McCall on our show. He's been to Birmingham to speak on wholesaling lease options. You're the one that taught Joe. Like this is like Joe kind of developed.
I taught Joe before he had a goatee, and I still had hair. Yeah. Yeah, his story is, and he and I are, of course, very, very, very good friends. And his story is actually interesting. He came to me in 2009, and he and I had met through an online forum called The Naked Investor, which was Brian, don't ask what Joe and I were doing on a website together called Naked Investor, okay? But hey, we were young, we needed the money, so.
Do I need to bleep all this out?
Yeah, but I should say it's naked-investor. Like that hyphen makes all the difference in the world, But it's a forum specifically about lease options. And the gentleman that runs it, Michael Carbonari, is in Florida. And super, super nice guy, still a good friend of mine as well. And that's where Joe and I met way back in the day. And Joe had, I know
I've heard that there's a huge difference between the word naked and nude. Naked is way less intrusive.
Yeah, the nude investor would be, you can't get around that. It's just, it is. But it was, anyway, I could go down a whole rabbit hole about that. Anyway, so, but Joe's story is interesting. He had told his wife that he was quitting his job as an engineer and told his wife, hey, if I'm going to do this whole, real estate thing, and lease options was a guy in Texas I got to go see. And so he came down and visited me for a couple of days and was out in the field with me. Saw me doing deals, picking up checks, saw the whole system, everything. And it took the leasing by model and then, blew up with it. As a matter of fact, to this day, I still talk about Joe. Is of all the people I've trained, Joe McCall was the one that still stands out, that literally at my kitchen table as I'm going through stuff with him. And keep in mind, I've never met the guy before. As we're at my kitchen table, and I'm teaching him all this stuff and showing my entire business model and everything, I could see in his eye, I could see looking at him, the wheels turning. Like he was thinking way ahead, like taking what I was teaching him, he's already taking it to a whole other level.
Wow.
So I've never seen that with anybody. So, but yeah, so I taught him back in 2009, and of course he's blown it up as very well.
Well, I don't want to get into specifics of what you call assigning lease options. He calls it wholesaling lease options. Mm-hmm. But I will link it up. I'll put a link right here on our YouTube video, and we'll make sure we put it in the show notes as well. But I do want to talk to you, I guess, a little bit more in depth about. I think the sandwich lease option. Correct me if I'm wrong. That is probably what most people think of when they hear lease option.
Yeah.
Investors or most people trying to get into investing. So I think that most people are probably familiar with the sandwich lease option. I'd like to talk to you about what you call the straight lease option.
Okay.
And it sounds to me like when you were explaining that is more for someone who wants to be an investor that potentially would want to hang on to this property long term. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it could be somebody that maybe has their own personal home and they're moving, whatever the case may be, and they don't want a whole portfolio yet, but they're like, you know what, this is a nice house. We realize we've got some equity in it, or maybe they don't have much equity in it, whatever the case may be. But instead of going out and becoming a big landlord, let's kind of test the waters of this house, and maybe instead of renting it, we do a lease option because we're going to attract better people, right? And we're going to get, say, 4 or 5% down. So let's assume it's a $200,000 house, Brian. They may say, well, I'm going to lease option it because I'll get, say, $10,000 non-refundable option consideration. I'm going to get a little bit higher than market rent. And they're going to take much better care of the property. They're going to be in the process of buying it. And it gives them a good way to stick their toes in the water of investing without really having hardly any risk. as long as they vet their potential optionee properly. It's much better than renting a house. If they've never been a landlord, they rent a house out and they're like, oh my gosh, what have I done? This is a nightmare. They're late all the time. All they have is a deposit. Turning up the house. I shouldn't let them in there. It's a whole other type of person. The people that get into a lease option on the buying side, Brian, at least at a certain price point, are typically people that have owned houses before. So they understand the homeowner mentality versus people that all they know is the renter mentality, right? Totally different mindset. Yeah. So the straight lease option is great for someone that has a property that wants to get into investing.
What about, so you're talking more from the sell side. Mm-hmm. What about the buy side? Mm-hmm. Say I'm an investor, or maybe I'm getting into it, and maybe I've been doing a lot of wholesaling or maybe some rehabs, and I want to actually start dipping my toe into I want to start buying property almost on terms.
Yes.
Or with a lease option.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought this up. So this ties into something we talked briefly about before we started here. And, a lot of people are really, investors are really excited about some of the new things that, the fresh things are out there, like the Airbnb, assisted living, student housing, those types of things that are really great avenues of income. But then the question is always, well, how do you acquire the property? And I think our first thought, whether you're an investor or not, is always, okay, I've got to get a loan. I got to get a loan and buy this house, and now I Airbnb it, or now I do assisted living, or whatever. And the truth is that whether you're going to do, if you want to get into Airbnb, assisted living, college housing, anything like that, you don't have to buy the house, guys. Just get the house on terms to a lease option. So you're in that. So like for $5,000, for the most part, if you got $5,000, you can secure a property, control it. You can cloud the title, so the owner can't turn around and sell it on you, right behind your back. And now you can Airbnb it, do assisted living, do college housing, whatever the case may be. But you don't have to buy the house, right? You control it with lease option. Now that is a straight lease option that we were just talking about, because there's no third party. It's just you and the owner. And you're getting into it you want to get to as little as option consideration as you can. Okay, now that's negotiating. The price, you want to get as low as you can, right? And then, so your payments are as low as you can get them. But then on the flip side, instead of lease optioning it out, maybe you're going to do Airbnb, short-term rental. Maybe you're going to do assisted living, college housing, whatever the case may be. But you've got very little money tied up in the property, but you've controlled that property. At the end of the day, real estate is about control.
100%. And this is why I love options. I've in my real estate career, I've definitely done way more wholesale transactions than anything else. But probably second is option contracts. Mm-hmm. I would utilize an option contract for a lot of different reasons. I have done what you would call assigning it. I've done the sandwich, and I don't like that. And I want to kind of end the show with talking about sandwich lease options, some of the legalities with that, maybe get some clarity from you on that.
Okay.
But continuing to talk about what you call the straight lease option, I always used to teach that I've done 4 different types of lease options. I've done the wholesaling lease option. I've done the sandwich lease option, which I call more of a traditional. And then I've acquired rental property through leasing, through option contract. Right. And I flipped a house through an option contract as well. I want to talk about, and these are just creative ways that I've been able to secure real estate. Like you said, control real estate. I want to ask you this. What is the difference for you? Like, because we hear people say, I buy houses cash or terms. Mm-hmm. What would be the difference for you between like a lease option and maybe why would you do a lease option and not a subject to, or not just a straight seller finance deal? Can you talk about kind of the differences between those different 3?
Yeah, absolutely, Brian. And so it's going to depend on, let's take a look at the seller first, the actual person that owns the house right now. Now, you come into the equation as the investor. You've got to know, and I talk about this when I do live speaking, I typically talk about the levels of desperation of the seller. And there's different levels of desperation. It starts off with for sale by owner, for rent by owner, works its all the way down to foreclosure. But you've got to look at the level of desperation for the seller. So a seller that's willing to do a subject to, right, where they deed their house over to you, is way down the line desperate. He's much more desperate than a seller that's saying, yeah, I'll sell it to you if it's on a lease option, because they're not deeding the house over, right? He's not saying, hey, here's my house, here's the keys, take my car, take my kids, everything, right? He's saying he's not that desperate yet. So a lease option allows you to get your foot in the door, secure that property with a homeowner that's not as desperate enough to do a subject to, right? And then you have the homeowner who, on their end financially, they would benefit doing a owner finance because they become the bank, right? Mm-hmm. But how many homeowners out there are owner finance savvy? They don't even know what it means. They don't understand the concept, right? What they do understand is this. If you were to say, listen, I like this house, I'd like to lease it from you, but would you be willing to sell it as well? They understand selling a house, they understand leasing a house. So if I leased it for whatever, 2, 3, 4, whatever the term may be, would you be willing to sell it? Yeah, I'd be willing to. Yeah. Boom, now you've got a lease option. Whereas they're not desperate enough to say, where you go, hey, would you go ahead and just give me your house? No, I'm not giving you my house, right? Or, hey, would you become the bank for 30 years? No, I'll be dead in 30 years, right? So it's a much easier entry.
If you had to choose, it sounds to me like you picked the path of, you were talking about earlier about your niche. You chose this niche. It sounds to me like it's the easier foot in the door.
Yes.
What if you had to choose between, what's the most attractive? I know every deal is going to be different. Every situation, every seller is going to be different. But you talked about what might be the differences between a seller and a motivated seller. What about you as the buyer, the investor? Is it more advantageous for you, typically speaking, to do a lease option because it's option and you have an option to do it. You don't have to do it.
Right.
What do you think about that?
Yeah. So as a buyer, obviously each deal, each case is individual. But as the buyer, the investor going into the deal, one of the nice things about the lease option is you're able to get into this property and secure it for a lot less money than, say, if you were going to buy it owner finance, right? Because if you were going to buy it owner finance, typically that owner is going to want, if they're savvy enough to do an owner finance, to sell it owner finance, they're savvy enough to know, well, you know what, I'm going to want 20% down or 15% or 10%, on the lower end. Well, that could be a substantial amount of money on a $200,000 house. You're talking about $20,000 plus escrow, all that stuff. On a subject to, almost every subject to, you're going to have to. There's going to be payments that are in arrears. You're going to have to come up with some capital, right? Wherever that capital comes from, doesn't matter, to get those payments caught up. In most cases, not every case, of course, but in a lot of cases, you're going to have to come up with a lot of money to get that caught up. With a lease option, you're talking about your first month's payment, right? So on a $200,000 house, you can get into it for, say, $1,600 plus your option fee, which that's negotiable. You can get that as low as possible. Say, hey, I'll give you $4,000, $3,000 option fee, not refundable. You keep it. If I don't exercise, you keep that. You never give it back to me. So you can get into it for a lot less.
Gotcha. So for example, when we do lease option assignments, we may be getting $10,000, $12,000, $14,000 down on the assignment. We're giving the owner part of our fee. Right. Part of our option fee, but we're only giving them in most cases like $1,500, sometimes maybe $2,000, and they're fine with that. Yeah. Got it. I appreciate that. That's some good insight for me. We're gonna make sure we link up a lot of these links on how to do a normal, traditional, maybe a straight lease option, sandwich lease option. We're gonna make sure we link all that up along with John's information, how you can get in touch with him. But before we go, John, the last kind of topic I want to kind of bring up is more of the legality part of it. And I understand you're not an attorney. We need to say that kind of thing. And I understand also that you're operating mostly, it sounds like, in Texas specifically. Yeah. So the laws that you probably are most familiar with are going to be state specific to Texas. But I do want to just ask you, kind of generally speaking, I'm hearing a lot of stuff in the news, and it's been out there for a couple of years, but I feel like it's catching more and more heat right now in reference specifically to this sandwich lease option. And you kind of alluded to it earlier, where I can't remember if it was off air before we started or on the show, but you mentioned that there are people out there who are just kind of running through tenants, but they know that this potential tenant buyer is not going to be able to perform, and they just kick them out, move to the next one, and move to the next one. And because of that, lease option, that phrase is starting to get, the rent to own phrase is starting to get a lot of heat, not just from politicians, really, and from lawmakers. So in lieu of that, how does that change what you're doing, John, or does it? And what can we do as investors to maybe safeguard ourselves against that?
Yeah. So first of all, you've got to run a reputable business. You've got to be in this to help people. You don't want to go at it and say, how can I put a revolving door in this house, right? You want to go at it to really truly help the people. So we actually turn down a tremendous number of applicants that come to us because we look at debt to income. Most investors, a lot of investors that are trying to do, say, lease options or any investing, all they care about is, do they have the down payment? If they can fog a mirror, hey, that's great. That's all we need, as long as they got the money. I don't care if they have the money. That's kind of required, right? Now let's look at debt to income. Matter of fact, we just turned down an application yesterday because of debt to income. I want to make sure they're going to fit into those lending guidelines. We put a tri-merge report on them. We do look at it the same way the lenders are going to look at it. So from a investor standpoint, you want to be very, very ethical. You want to do everything you can to help the people and put them in a good position for success. Now, on the sandwich lease option, going back to a little bit of the legalities, I'll talk a little bit about Texas. I know you got people listening or watching that are in Texas. And I won't go into all the depth of Texas, but Texas does have specific laws about Texas. It turns out I'm the educator for Texas for lease options. But the way I became that way, Brian, is I actually read the law. So I always tell people, whether you're in Texas or North Carolina or whatever state you're in, when it comes to real estate law, one of the best things you can do is actually read the law. I always tell people, never ever go to a real estate online forum for legal advice. Yeah. That's like going to WebMD to try to figure out why, you've got this big growth, like your spine or something. I don't know. But don't go to an online forum for legal advice. Also, don't get your contracts from an online forum. I don't care what you're doing. But this is your business. You have to take it seriously. So in Texas, I actually read the law line by line by line by line. The original bill, the amendments, and the final bill as well. And lease options are totally viable in Texas, but you have to have read the law, have certain verbiage in your contracts, et cetera. And so I would say, no matter what state you live in, and different cities are going to have different codes as well, is read the law and understand the laws. Don't go online and go by rumors, on the law. In Texas, for example, we cannot do a sandwich lease option because the seller of a lease option has to have fee simple title. Okay, so in a sandwich lease option, there's three parties, right? But there's two sellers. There's the original seller. Then you, as the investor on the BC transaction, you're the seller of that. You're the seller in the contract of that lease option, right? You don't have fee simple title. Right. So we don't do sandwich lease options. And Brian, I can't tell you how many real estate attorneys I've had call me, and I have to educate them on what fee simple title is. I was about to ask you about that in particular. Is that you're talking about Texas and you're doing all this stuff and you know all this. I would say in my state, I don't know of any 100% competent attorneys. Yeah, no, you're right. That know this stuff. I'm being serious, and I know, right. And I know them all. And now they all have the forms. They can all do it, but they'll all tell you the same thing. It's my opinion that this. It's my opinion that this. But at the end of the day, his opinion really and truly doesn't even mean anything. The only opinion that matters is the judge's opinion. Is the judge's. Yep. Yeah, and so I've had countless. I've actually had attorneys buy my course from me. I used to have a separate course just for Texas with the contracts and all that stuff. And I would have attorneys buy that. Real estate attorneys buy it from me, and I still to this day have real estate attorneys call me with questions, and I have to go through clarification on what this term means. I have to explain to what this means, because it's not. It's one thing to draft a lease agreement. As an attorney, it's different when you actually have to get into the law, and let's face it, reading law all day is not the most exciting thing. Agree.
But I want to go back to something you just said, though, John. I mean, this is kind of striking me as really interesting, and maybe something that we who are listening and are maybe doing lease options need to heed. You said you can't do, it's illegal to do sandwich lease options in Texas.
In Texas,
is that what you said?
Right.
Okay, so how many? And you don't know the laws of every state, guys. And for sure, whatever state you're in, you definitely need to make sure you understand the laws. For sure, John's not going to be able to recite off the top of his head laws in every state, and every state's going to be different. But I wonder how many states it's technically not illegal, it's not on the books, but it kind of is in the way it's maybe gone to court and been decided. We kind of know. To make the question simple for you, what are some alternatives to a sandwich lease option that maybe we should be practicing instead of the sandwich?
Well, Texas is the only state that would have any laws about sandwich lease options that I've ever heard.
But John, that might be true, but there's a lot of the sandwich, and that's why I brought this up. Yeah. There's so much, like, it's if you're not breaking the law, you're right up there next to that line.
Yeah, and there's going to be different states and different. It's crazy, Brian. Even cities now. I think Cincinnati has specific laws about regarding not just city code, but about real estate transactions. Where that I would have thought there's no way that's a state thing, not a city thing. But yet some cities are trying to pretend like they're the state. They're the governing power, as powerful as the state. But instead of doing a sandwich lease option, you've got a couple options. A couple options. A couple of things are you can either acquire the property subject to, and then lease option it, right? You can lease option on the front, and you can rent it out. Or this goes back to acquiring it, securing or controlling the property with a lease option. Then you can do whether it be Airbnb, rent it out on the back end, that type of thing. And not do a lease option on the back end. But if you can secure it with a subject to, right, and then lease option on the back end as well. And the benefit to that as the investor is, you're getting the people are on a shorter term. So it may be a 1-year lease option. So you get a feel if you're going to execute or not, right? And so if you're wanting to hold it for 2 or 3 years, you can go ahead and get somebody in there on lease option. And, if they don't execute, well, now you can go ahead and do it again, right? But you can acquire it by subject to and lease option on the back end.
No. Well, I think that, what you said about, we want to operate in integrity and we want to make sure we're doing the right thing. I think that most of us fall in the camp of we have good intentions. I would think that almost all of us, the vast majority, we definitely have good intentions, but good intentions aren't good enough. And I would say if there's anything to be learned on this show with John is make sure you have found a competent real estate attorney to answer some of these tough questions for you in your state. John, last question I have for you is what are some questions, what are some maybe some things that we should be asking of a potential attorney before we ever get him or her involved in this type of transaction? How do we qualify a potential lease option attorney?
That's a good question, Brian. First thing I would say is, do you when you're interviewing an attorney? Because guys, keep in mind, you are going to interview an attorney. All right, they've got to pass muster to get to be your attorney. And here's the thing: all attorneys are not created equal. If you find an attorney that says they do a number of things, and I've spent tens of thousands of dollars years and years ago with an attorney that, oh my gosh, I've got a whole story about that. He said there's a big firm in Dallas, and this attorney I got put in touch with, and I didn't know any better. I said, yeah, I'm a real estate attorney. Great, and anyway, it was just money being blown out the window that we were using for, at the time, contracts and some documents, this and that. And then I was going to franchise leasing to buy, right? Way back in the day, I was going to franchise leasing to buy. I said, I told him, I think I'm going to go ahead and franchise leasing to buy. Oh my gosh, that's it. You're not going to believe this. I'm a franchise attorney. So he's not only really, I could have said, I could have said, I'm going to see my dentist. Oh my gosh, I'm a malpractice attorney. Pick anything. He was suddenly, so he actually drafted the initial franchise documents for him, which took forever. And he finally got the initial ones to me. Because he told me, see, he was a franchise attorney. He did a lot of stuff for Sonic, Sonic Drive-In or whatever. So he got the original documents to me, the original franchise documents to go through and review and everything. And I told him, I said, Dom, it was his name, Dom. I said, yeah, I've gone through the documents, these franchise documents. Look pretty lengthy, look good. I got a question. Why do they keep referencing kitchen equipment? Because he had boilerplated Sonic franchise documents. Oh, here you go. He was not a franchise attorney.
Right.
So anyway, so having said that, ask the attorney, do you do litigation? That's a good question, because not all attorneys do litigation, right?
Do you want them to do litigation? What's the correct answer?
If they don't, well, you may or may not, but that's something to keep in mind. Do you do litigation? And litigation, guys, is if they were to go to court, okay? If they go to court, because not all attorneys will go to court. Represent you in a suit on either plaintiff or defendant side. Do they do litigation, real estate litigation? No, you don't? Okay. I'll keep that in mind because before this interview is over, I'm going to ask who you recommend for real estate litigation, right? And take note of who I recommend for real estate litigation. And then you want to ask things like, do you specialize in residential or commercial real estate, okay? And as an investor, maybe your niche is going to be lease options. And ask them how long, do you have a lot of clients doing lease options currently? Yes or no? How many clients, have you helped a number of clients that pass lease options? Have you drafted the contracts for them, right? Do you currently have any case study to show or that you've studied lease options in this state that went to court, regardless of the reason? Do you have any case study? And not only do you have case study, but let's review that case study and what was your opinion of that? Really dive in. Yeah. So that they know, that they did their homework, they did the studying. And I would also ask for references,
Hey, John, thank you. I appreciate that. I think that just speaking for me and a lot of our audience is going to be Alabama based. About 30 to 40% of the people that listen to this podcast are in the state of Alabama. And I'll just tell you guys, I do not know of someone who specializes in lease options here, especially here in Birmingham. And it's hard. It's really difficult because you'll go through a program or you want to learn how to do this strategy because it's a powerful strategy. But do I have the right documentation? Am I closing the right way? Am I doing things the right way? There's so much stuff in the news right here in Alabama about people doing things the wrong way. Again, good intentions. They're just not doing it the right way and they're getting in trouble. And we definitely want to make sure that you're not getting in trouble, that you are. If you've learned anything from this podcast, make sure that you are going to seek professional help when it comes to lease options. Because this stuff, it's great. It's an unbelievably powerful tool. I've used options. I love options. But you got to make sure you're doing them the right way.
Absolutely. And kind of in summary on the sandwich lease options, no matter what state you're in, is one of the things as an investor you can do to protect everybody is, first of all, if you're going to do a sandwich lease option, or as a buyer, okay, as a buyer, if you're going to do a sandwich lease option, go ahead and do a title search. When you lock up that house with a contract on the AB side, is cloud the title, file a memorandum of option, clouds the title. The seller cannot sell the property out from underneath you or out from underneath the end buyer. And I would also use a servicing company for the payments. That way, the mortgage payments are being made. So whether it be Evergreen Note Servicing or whoever you want to use, that way, that side, the AB side is covered, right? So when you go into a sandwich lease option, guys, as the investor, you've got to go at it with the mindset of you, as if you're the one that's going to be buying the property, as if you're the end buyer. What are you going to do to protect you? Because that's what you want to do for the end buyer. You've done everything you can to protect you as if you're the buyer. That way it relays over into the end buyer's safety. Yeah.
John, tell everybody how they can get a hold of you. I know you got some phenomenal training, some phenomenal resources. You've been doing this for a very long time. You're just talking about you're part of the whatever it is, like helping, understand the laws and attorneys and things like that. How can people get in touch with you? How can people reach out to you if they need to?
Yeah, so for like our training website is leaseoptionclasses.com. That's leaseoptionclasses.com. A lot of good videos on there. We're really ramping up our video recording, so we're going to see even a bigger presence on YouTube and Vimeo, and on Lease Option Classes, a lot of free stuff there. Of course, you can also find out different areas where I'm speaking. We've been trying to keep that updated, but my schedule is such it's hard to keep it updated. You can go to you can find me, of course, on Facebook under John Jackson. There's only three.
I'll never find you.
Yeah, but you can go to leaseoptionclasses.com, and if you want to see what we do on the real estate side, as far as okay, let me see what these deals are. Our website, I'm sorry, is Leasing to Buy, and that's TOBY, leasingtobuy.com. You can see the houses that we do there. You can see the actual deals that we're doing, not just in Texas, but all over. And of course, you can reach out to me through there. There's 1,000 ways to reach out to me through Leasing to Buy there as well.
John Jackson, the king of lease options. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate you.
You bet, Brian. Thanks a lot.
Guys, hit the subscribe button. Got some incredible guests lined up. You don't want to miss those. Make sure you got the alerts tagged so you are getting these alerts. We got some incredible shows coming up. We love you so much, and we're going to see you next time.